Welcome to It Is Important, an English learning podcast where we also discuss things that matter. So, learn English, speak English, live English. Hi everyone, I'm NV, your favorite host, whether you admit it or not. And today we've got a very special guest with us. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, NV. I'm excited to be here.
So today, we're going to talk about something that nobody really likes, but everyone experiences. We're talking about failure. More specifically, why learning from failure is so important. Mark, when I say the word failure, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Honestly, my driver's license test. I failed it 3 times before I finally passed.
3 times? That must have been frustrating.
Oh, it was terrible, especially because all my friends passed on their first try. I felt so embarrassed.
And that's exactly what we want to explore today, because I think most of us see failure as this negative thing, something to be ashamed of. But what if I told you that failure might be one of the most important teachers in your life? Let's start with a basic question. Mark, how would you define failure?
That's interesting. I guess failure is when you try to do something and you don't succeed. You don't reach your goal.
Exactly. And I think that's important to remember. You can only fail if you actually try something. If you never try, you never fail, but you also never succeed.
That's a good point. So failure means you at least had the courage to try.
Right. And you know what's interesting? Different cultures see failure very differently. In some countries, failure is seen as something really shameful. In other places, especially in startup culture in places like Silicon Valley, they say fail fast, fail often.
Yeah, I've heard that phrase. It means you should try things quickly, and if they don't work, you learn and move on.
Exactly. So the first important thing about failure is understanding what it really is. It's not the opposite of success. It's part of the path to success.
I like that perspective. It makes failure sound less scary.
Okay, so let's get personal. Mark, you mentioned your driver's license. Tell us more about that experience.
Sure. So the first time I failed, I didn't check my mirrors properly. The second time, I was too nervous and made stupid mistakes. I even forgot to use my turn signal a few times. The third time, I knocked over a cone during the parking test.
Ouch. How did you feel after each failure?
After the first one, I was just disappointed. After the second one, I was really frustrated with myself. But after the third one, I was actually angry. I thought, why is this so hard for me when everyone else finds it easy?
So what changed? How did you finally pass?
Well, after the third failure, I did something different. Instead of just practicing more, I actually analyzed what went wrong. I wrote down every mistake. I realized I was getting too nervous during the test, so I worked on staying calm. I also asked my instructor for honest feedback.
So you learned from your failures.
Exactly. And you know what? When I finally passed on the 4th try, I think I was actually a better driver than my friends who passed the first time because I had to really understand what I was doing wrong.
That's a perfect example. And I have my own failure story about learning English, actually.
Oh, tell us.
So when I first started speaking English, I was terrified of making mistakes. I would prepare every sentence in my head before speaking. One time, I was at a coffee shop in London, and I wanted to order a latte, but I was so nervous that when the barista asked me what I wanted, I completely froze. My mind went blank.
What did you do?
Oh, I just pointed at the menu like I couldn't speak at all. It was so embarrassing. I left the coffee shop feeling like I would never be able to speak English properly.
But obviously that's not true because here you are hosting a podcast in English.
Right, but that failure taught me something very important. I realized that trying to be perfect was actually making me worse. After that embarrassing moment, I decided to just speak, even if I made mistakes. And you know what? people understood me anyway. My English improved much faster after I stopped being afraid of failing.
So your failure actually helped you succeed in the long run.
Absolutely. And I think that's true for so many things in life. You know, Mark, we're not alone in our failures. Some of the most successful people in history failed many, many times before they succeeded.
Like who?
Well, let's talk about Thomas Edison. He tried thousands of different materials before he found the right one for the light bulb filament.
Thousands? That's crazy.
Yes, and when someone asked him about all his failures, he said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work."
Wow, that's a completely different way of looking at it.
Exactly. He didn't see them as failures, he saw them as learning experiences. Each failure gave him information about what doesn't work, which brought him closer to finding what does work.
That's actually brilliant. Are there other examples?
Oh, tons! J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, was rejected by 12 different publishers before someone finally agreed to publish her book.
The Harry Potter books, they're some of the most successful books ever written.
I know. Can you imagine if she had given up after the first rejection? Or even after the 10th rejection?
We wouldn't have Harry Potter. That would be so sad.
Exactly. And there's one more story I love. Michael Jordan, probably the greatest basketball player of all time, was actually cut from his high school basketball team.
No way.
Yes, way. He wasn't good enough to make the team, but instead of giving up, he practiced harder. He used that failure as motivation.
These stories are really inspiring. It shows that failure doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you're not there yet.
Not there yet. I love that phrase. It's all about perspective. So, we've talked about what failure is, we've shared our personal stories, and we've heard about famous failures. But the big question is, how do we actually learn from failure? What's the process?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, I think the first step is to accept the failure. Don't deny it, don't make excuses, just accept that it happened.
That's hard, though. Our natural reaction is often to blame something or someone else.
You're right, it is hard, but it's necessary. Because if you're busy making excuses, you can't learn anything.
Okay, so step 1, accept the failure. What's step 2?
Step 2 is to analyze what went wrong. Ask yourself honest questions. What did I do? What could I have done differently? What was in my control and what wasn't?
Like what I did with my driver's test. I wrote down all my mistakes.
Exactly, and this is important. Be specific. Don't just say, I failed because I'm bad at driving. Say, I failed because I didn't check my mirrors consistently.
Right, because one of those you can fix and the other just makes you feel bad about yourself.
Precisely. Step 3, make a plan. Based on what you learned, what will you do differently next time?
So it's not enough to just understand what went wrong. You need to actually change your approach.
Yes. And step 4, and this is crucial, you have to try again. You have to take action.
Because if you don't try again, you didn't really learn anything. You just gave up.
Exactly. Learning from failure isn't just thinking about it. It's applying those lessons to your next attempt.
This is really practical advice.
And one more thing. Be patient with yourself. Learning from failure takes time. It's not always a straight line.
So it's more like a zigzag?
Yes, or a spiral staircase. It might feel like you're going in circles, but you're actually moving upward.
I really like that image.
Since most of our listeners are learning English, let's talk about failure in language learning. Mark, do you speak any other languages?
I'm learning Spanish right now, actually, and I make mistakes every single day.
What kind of mistakes?
I mix up words, use the wrong tense, and sometimes say something completely different than I intended.
Any embarrassing moments?
Oh, yes. I once tried to say I'm embarrassed, but I accidentally said I'm pregnant.
No.
Yes. Everyone laughed, and I didn't understand why at first.
That's hilarious. But did it stop you?
At first, yes.
But then I realized people were laughing with me, not at me.
That's important. Mistakes in language learning are proof that you're trying.
Exactly. Every mistake is a learning opportunity.
And even native speakers make mistakes sometimes.
Really?
Of course, nobody speaks perfectly all the time.
So we should not be afraid to make mistakes then.
Yes, speak and write anyway. That's how you improve. We're coming to the end. Mark, what's your key takeaway?
Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the journey.
I love that. For me, it's about how you respond to failure.
Accept it, analyze it, plan, and try again.
Exactly. And remember, failure is not falling down, it's staying down.
That's powerful.
Whatever you failed at, don't give up. Learn and try again. All right, everyone. That's all for today. Thank you, Mark, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to It Is Important. Subscribe and share. See you next week. Bye.